Coming up on First at 4, we continue to track the latest developments with Hurricane Ian as it makes another landfall. And we talk with a Kentucky native who specializes in hunting hurricanes.
Dedicated to eastern and southern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News First at 4.
Good afternoon, I'm Steve Hensley. First at 4, Hurricane Ian is now hitting South Carolina after the deadly storm caused catastrophic damage in Florida. Now, we will likely see some rain from Ian here this weekend, but it might not be as bad as feared yesterday. Meteorologist Evan Hatter joins us now with the latest on this first.
Well, that's right, Steve. Our first alert weather day, it continues for now, but the possibility is we may be able to let that wording go because, quite frankly, it's not as bad as anticipated, which is a good sign. Outside right now, you see some parts of the area are seeing sunshine right now. A look outside shows us London is in darn near full sunshine. 68 the reading there. Everybody else, well, Hazard's overcast at 63. Pikeville overcast at 57. And you see where the clouds are. You don't need a satellite map. It's 72 in Somerset, 70 in Irvine, 68 London and Williamsburg, whereas many of us across the Big Sandy and even much of the Kentucky River Valley into the upper 50s and lower 60s. You see the beginning of that cloud shield working in, even a few showers making their way to about Bluefield right now. There is the major system as we head into South Carolina. Tropical tracker working on through. Here's the latest. Hurricane Ian has winds of 85 miles per hour. About 55 miles northeast of Charleston, made landfall at about 2:05 this afternoon with a pressure of 977 millibars, but I will guarantee you that it is weakening quickly out there for the rest of the evening. Of course, if you're headed out this evening, I would grab the rain gear just in case, but many of us may hold off on the showers for a little bit with Game of the Week. Our Game of the Week, our Appalachian Wireless Game of the Week, Shelby Valley at Prestonsburg, 60 at Kick, falling through the 50s, but we're going to keep those rain chances around through the evening. Now, of course, we're going to be keeping an eye on what's left of Ian, and meteorologist Cameron Aaron will have the latest coming up a little bit later on from the Apple Festival in Paintsville. Steve?
All right, Evan, thank you. A Central Kentucky native is among those who fly into hurricanes to get more accurate readings of the powerful storms. Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Burton is from Lincoln County. He's in the U.S. Air Force and has flown into many hurricanes, including most recently Ian. WYMT's Phil Pendleton spoke to him today and has more on his unique and very important job.
Stephen Burton grew up here in Lincoln County. In fact, he tells me that he and his wife want to retire here when his service is up. But right now, his job is a navigator on a really large plane, flying into the eye of the storm, the center of the hurricane, to get very important readings so people on the ground can know exactly how strong these storms can be.
Just saw an opportunity to do something different. So there was an opportunity to come here, and I did that about 8 years ago now.
He's flown into 100 different hurricanes: Irma, Harvey, Matthew, and most recently Ian.
I flew it when it was on the south side of Cuba. It was a Cat 2, but it was there were some bumps, but it wasn't the life-changing storm that some of the guys that flew it right before landfall experienced.
Some of those crew members said it was one of the most powerful ones they had flown in. Burton said the purpose of the flights is to get readings and to launch sondes to find just how strong the winds are.
The main purpose of the flying through the hurricane is there's just some things you can't get from satellite that you can only get by flying through the storm.
And Burton says it is challenging because he lives on the Gulf Coast and he's trying to get his home ready for the storm while he is flying into them. In Lincoln County, Phil Pendleton, now back to you.
Burton's wife is also a hurricane hunter, but he says military rules prohibit them from flying on missions together. Well, it's not just homes that were destroyed by Hurricane Ian in Fort Myers, Florida. Critical infrastructure was devastated all along the state's west coast, like water plants, the power grid, and other essential services. One hurricane survivor says he feared for his life as Hurricane Ian's floodwaters quickly overwhelmed his family's home in Fort Myers. He said he and his brother used mattresses and coolers as flotation devices to get family members, including his grandmother and 2 young daughters, to safety.
I told my brother we have no choice but to survive or die. You know, like if we don't get up and get our family to safety, you know, the worst could happen. So we did it.
We'll have more on this story coming up in our next half hour. Homes across Florida remain inundated with floodwater, and nearly 2 million homes and businesses are still without power today, 2 days after Hurricane Ian first made landfall and caused massive devastation across the state. Florida emergency management officials say the death toll now stands at 20. CBS's Chris Hoffman has the latest from Fort Myers.
Coast Guard helicopters flew over Sanibel Island Friday, ready to rescue those who remain trapped after Hurricane Ian knocked out the only road to the barrier island. The Coast Guard has already rescued hundreds of people and pets along Florida's southwestern coast, and emergency personnel are now expanding their search.
You see the really troubling images of a washed out home on the Fort Myers beach, and that really is ground zero and obviously very important. But this was such a big storm that there are effects far inland.
Fort Myers is indeed ground zero.
Stay right there.
That's where neighbors came to the aid of a man who was trapped under the rubble. Fort Myers is in Lee County, one of the hardest hit areas.
If we can get the power back on, a lot of things will be solved. Whenever that happens, I don't know.
Outside a grocery store in Fort Myers Shores, people with no power lined up to get ice. Even 20 miles inland, this is some of what people are dealing with in the aftermath of Hurricane Ian. This road was covered by at least 4 feet of water, and now neighbors are trying to clean up with no power and no drinkable water.
I never thought in a million years it would get all the way to the garage.
Anthony Roman has lived in Fort Myers for 15 years.
This was all set up, table, chairs, and that leather chair over there was sitting right here. I'm missing a chair there. I'm sure it's in the pool, but this pool was crystal clear 3 days ago.
It's not just the Gulf Coast that's experiencing widespread devastation. From Seminole County to the Tampa area to the Orlando area, communities are submerged.
This is definitely the worst hurricane I've been through.
Now it's South Carolina that's feeling the effects of Ian. While there is heavy rain and flooding, the damage isn't expected to be anywhere near the devastation on Florida's Gulf Coast. Chris Hoffman, CBS News, Fort Myers, Florida.
Lots of destruction, and as we know all too well, it takes a lot of time to clean up from that massive flooding. And just to make something clear, there are 20 unconfirmed deaths from Ian. Only 1 is confirmed through CBS News right now, but obviously most folks are expecting that death toll to go higher. Well, fall is here, and Paintsville is full of fun this afternoon as the town's history-rich festival brings in visitors from all around this weekend. WYMT's Buddy Forbes is among the crowd for day 1 of the celebration, and he joins us now live with more. Buddy?
Yes, Steve, those familiar festival smells are filling the air. The sounds are pouring through the streets of downtown Paintsville, with people hoping to get a slice of that first day of the first Kentucky Apple Festival since 2019. The streets are packed here as Paintsville kicks off fall with a little tradition, with the crowd favorite booths, music, and a little something for everyone. Festival organizers say this year is starting off strong, and they're glad to see so many smiling faces.
The community is extremely excited about the official Apple Festival being here this year. It's been a kind of a rough time where COVID has taken it away the past 2 years.
Yeah, people I'm talking to here are saying that it really feels like things are getting back to normal here in Paintsville, and they're just glad that a festival like this can come up so that they can really get together and kind of get away from all of the heartache that's been happening across the region. In Paintsville, Buddy Forbes, WYMT Mountain News.
All right, Buddy, thank you very much. We'll have more about the festival and what it means to the community coming up at 6, and several other festivals are happening across the region today and tomorrow. The weather today actually looking decent. Well, O'Charlie's restaurant based in Nashville collected donations of school supplies for Letcher County Public Schools. The donations were dropped off at Letcher County Central High School this morning. Superintendent Denise Yant says the supplies are for its art program, PE, and preschool. Those supplies are needed for the schools impacted by the flooding, and those are Whitesburg Middle School, West Whitesburg, and Martha Jane Potter Elementary Schools.
It's Christmas morning for teachers. Being over there with my PE teachers and my preschool teachers, they are looking and oohing and awing about all the wonderful things that have been donated and that their kids will enjoy. And that's what it's about. It's about our kids.
The superintendent tells us she expects crews to begin work next week on the district's buildings that were damaged by floodwaters. A group of Republican-led states are suing the Biden administration over the president's plan to forgive student loan debt for millions of Americans. The lawsuit, filed by Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, and South Carolina, accuses the administration of overstepping its executive powers, but the Department of Education is still making plans to move forward with accepting applications from borrowers. CBS's Natalie Brand reports from Washington.
This action by President Biden will quite literally change and save lives.
While Democratic lawmakers and student groups celebrate President Biden's plan to cancel student debt and call for the Department of Education to quickly implement it,
in reality, the president's actions violate the law and are beyond his authority.
Arkansas's Attorney General, joined by 5 other GOP states, are suing. They want to block the administration's plan to forgive up to $10,000 in student debt for those earning less than $125,000 and up to $20,000 for Pell Grant recipients.
The administration argues that a law passed by Congress, the HEROES Act, allows the White House to act in times of national emergency.
But President Biden is using this law to justify this forgiveness program, with COVID being the national emergency. Perhaps President Biden has simply forgotten that he declared the COVID pandemic over.
Persis Yu of the Student Borrower Protection Center says the Department of Education is still working to release the application for borrowers in October.
There are a lot of lawsuits flying, but the administration is going forward, and so borrowers should get ready to apply for this relief.
But in a change announced Thursday, the Department of Education says borrowers with federal loans owned by private banks will not qualify for the new forgiveness unless they consolidated their loans into the government's direct lending program before Thursday. Natalie Brand, CBS News, Washington.
The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office this week estimated that the administration's program will cost around $400 billion through the next 3 decades. The Department of Education released its own estimate, saying it would cost around $379 billion over the life of the program. Coming up on First at 4, we take you inside the locker room to preview tonight's big high school football matchups around the mountains.
And a beautiful evening is in store across the mountains, but we are tracking some changes this weekend. I have your full forecast coming up.
No matter